that, by the way. And I did lose my train of, oh, so if I'm doing the welding capstone, both of those experiences need to be captured in internship or inters, and there's additional information that we'd like to know, like who's the employer, what's the occupation, some of those things that are going to be added this year. And that is just to help us with some of the data that's being provided for this. The last thing that I want to say about work-based learning is if you are looking at the 1002 information that came out, when it talked about ICC, it talked about has to do a level 2 work-based learning experience or above. If you clicked on that link, if you were able to view that, you saw these 4 definitions of these 0 credit courses that have been shared by the Department of Education. These were originally shared last year. They have gone back and worked with us to update some of those definitions so that we could better align on all of these. The one thing that I would share with you on this, I have 2 things that I want to point out to you. One is levels 2, 3, and 4 would count for Perkins. All right, so that's internships, modern youth apprenticeships, and apprenticeships are all going to count for Perkins, including, remember, internships can include workplace simulations. The second thing that I would point out, those 0 credit courses, we are getting a lot of questions on this. We are working on providing more guidance with this, but just keep in mind that those are for DOE counting purposes. So whether it's for grad pathways or GPS, if you just put in that 0 credit course code for like work-based learning capstone, you won't get funded for work-based learning capstone because we won't pick that up. All right, so for the standalone experiences, especially for the standalone experiences, you've got to enroll them in both courses. All right, so if you can help spread that word, or at least until you hear other guidance from us or DOE about, you know, how we do that. For right now, what we would tell you is standalone experiences, you need to plan on enrolling them in both. Steve, I think you were the first hand raised, and then I've got Audra and Jean.
And maybe just really quickly before we jump to question, sorry. This particular document, some of you asked for the link, and I've shared it with those of you who have asked. We will include that in the follow-up email, so you'll have the document. And then on this particular aspect especially, we are working on some shared language, collaborating with DOE, kind of expounding on what Tony just shared here, specifically as it relates to, you know, how to do the enrollments and everything, and what because these 0 credit enrollments are being required as of this year. It was optional last year. So we can move to questions now.
Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate it. My question, we always try to be really pathway oriented with these students and work-based learning experiences, you know, try to put auto tech kids in that auto realm, diesel kids, so to speak, welding and all of that. One thing that we're noticing, and we actually had a meeting this morning with Batesville Tool and Die, is we're getting a lot of employers that are coming in and they want kids that are out of different program areas to come in and work in different areas that aren't pathway related. Example, we had a precision machine girl from Franklin County last year that ended up in the welding department at Woodmiser in Batesville. I know what the state likes to keep them in those things and have them tracked in those pathways. However, a lot of these kids aren't college bound and they're career bound, and I don't want to cut them out of an opportunity simply because of that pathway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I mean, as we're looking at part of the definition here of what counts as a work-based learning experience that is evaluating the quality of that program, you know, it says in a given career field aligned and evaluated with course and training competencies. So if we're going outside of that particular program of study, or certainly outside of that industry, then it's no longer related to what they learned in class. And Steve, I would agree with you. You're not going to have a student where you say, well, we're not going to put you in that. We're not going to give you that experience. It just might not count for Perkins. But again, go back to right now, our target is 25 to 30% of concentrators. That's our target. I know that each of the different individual sites have different counts. We're not asking for 100% of students to be doing that.
Correct.
And
I wanted to make sure, and I just wanted to have ask an honest question on that, because I mean, we got kids making $20, $22, $25 an hour in some cases and have great opportunities. And I mean, in all honesty, I'm pretty jealous of what these kids have to offer compared to what some of our adults do. So. And
I'm not sure, like, if somebody's doing welding and they went to a precision machining, or they were doing precision machining and they went to take a welding one, I'm not sure. That's still within advanced manufacturing. That's pretty closely related. But, you know, I think if we get into specific examples of what we can do there, we're not trying to penalize or, you know, work against, you know, somebody having a really quality experience by any means. But Audra, I think you're next up. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. My question, I have two. One is, I have a high school that is using the professional career internship piece, and I'm concerned about the documentation. I don't see, when I ask for paperwork, I'm not seeing the training plans. They're just going out and they're doing X number of work, you know, hours of work per week. They're doing some related work in the classroom. They usually report to the teacher maybe 2-3 days a month. That's it. So how do I handle this? It's really becoming difficult with one of my schools, and I know they're counting it as funding for funding purposes, but in my opinion, and in listening to you, they're not meeting the requirements for funding. Am I wrong?
No, you're great questions, except CEI, or what we did used to call it professional careers internships, is not funded. So I don't think we have to worry about this quite yet. If you're wanting to count that as part of like a Perkins metric or something like that, then I think we do have to make sure that we have a training plan. One of the reasons why we would actually like to bring that in and make it be funded is so that we would have a little bit more say over, hey, if you want this experience to be funded, you got to make sure it's a little bit more aligned, and that you have some sort of a training plan that goes along with that experience. So we want to make sure that those are quality as well. But currently, CEI is not a funded course. And it also doesn't require any prerequisites, any CTE prerequisites like the WBL capstone course does.
Okay, because somehow they were able to last year get some funding for that, and it kind of slipped through me. So anyway, but maybe we can have further conversation. The other question I had was related to the next slide. You had talked about the course codes for 0 credit enrollments. Would it be possible for you guys to provide us with a list of that information?
Yeah, we will. It'll be coming out very shortly.
Thank you.
Yeah. Gene?
Good morning. Thank you. A couple clarifiers on the academic internships that you just talked with Audra and stuff, the CEI. Those are actually, do we need to record those on Inters for bucket 3? Because that's what they're doing them for, or bucket 2. I mean, that's what the schools are doing them for, correct? So do they have to go through Inters even though they're non-funded? That's one question. Because that's what I've been told, all those experiences for their graduation pathways.
So if they're doing them for grad pathways, I think that's where it's going to come into, they need to use the 0 credit course.
Okay, but that's course code 0530, right? Which is the career exploration internship. It's just not funded.
Yes, but that is not the 0 credit course. There is
Okay.
the 0 credit course for that would be, and I don't have the course codes on here, and oh, do we?
So what I'm saying is now all of a sudden we are being in charge of enters data for graduation pathways that aren't CTE kids, correct?
So Gene, all I can share with you is that DOE has created, so that level 2 internship course includes all of those experiences, right? It includes the CEI, it includes the work-based learning capstone, it includes all of those. And for it to count for grad pathways, there is a possibility that DOE may state that if, I'm just going to give you an example, like I think the course code is something like 0542. So if you have a student that is enrolled in CEI, all right, they would also have to enroll, they may also have to enroll in 0542 for 0 credits in order to be counted for graduation pathways. If you want it to be counted for Perkins, like they're aligning it to a program of study, and even though it doesn't have, for whatever reason, you wanted to use CEI instead of work-based learning capstone course, if you want it to count for Perkins, we're going to have you enter that into Inters.
Yeah, I'm clear on the Perkins and the funding, and why would you go somewhere else other than the capstone? It's this other part that's for the graduation pathways, and then Inters is a place where they pull the certifications, work-based learning and stuff like that. And I know that's part of box 2, and we had the same discussion, I think it was.
So what I'm saying is in the
4 or 5
future, I don't know that DOE is going to use Inters data to pull that for graduation pathways.
Yeah.
But they are this current year, correct?
For work-based learning, they have not used Inters data. They use it for certifications and concentrator. There's still discussion about the work-based learning part. So at this
Okay,
point,
thank you.
what Tony says,
Right.
best we know, they're going to use those 0 credit courses for the work-based learning part, unless they decide otherwise, in which we'll all let you know. But I think right now that's what they're saying.
And we have been having conversations with them about, hey, we can provide you a lot of this information, like for the level 2 experiences and some of those things. We can provide you a lot of that information so that schools wouldn't necessarily have to enroll students in 2 separate courses. We've not reached an agreement on that piece yet. I will tell you, like with CEI, because it's not funded, not everybody puts it into Inters. But so that's where we kind of get into that mix.
Okay.
All right. But we're
All right.
working on it. I wish I had better answers for you, but just know that we're working on it.
Yeah, I'm just, we're into week 4 already in school and enrollments and stuff, and if it's a change on that one. Then the other one I had is that the way we teach, and thinking the way NLPS is set up, when you're saying 25 to 30% of concentrators would have a work-based learning experience at a level 2, 3, or 4, correct?
Yeah.
That's the goal for the state. So if I'm doing NLPS, as some of my partner schools do, at 1 course a year, starting my sophomore year, they will have no concentrators till the end of their senior year. Because they'll take principals their sophomore year, concentrator A their junior year, and they'll finish as a concentrator at the May of their senior year.
Yeah.
Is that
So-
correct in my understanding?
If they only take 1 course a year and they do their sophomore, junior, and senior year, that is correct. That doesn't mean that they couldn't do like a work-based learning capstone course also their senior year. Or keep in mind that if, like, let's say that I'm taking the concentrator B course, I could also enroll in the capstone course that senior year. Maybe I'm doing a CEI or something along those lines. The other thing is, and we need to give more information on this, about we can't fund it, but we certainly can count like things that they do over the summer.
Yeah, but the
Right.
majority of my students do not capstone out, because the way our structure is, until their senior year May. So I don't have them the next year to do capstone.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is you can, that's also the reason why the technical skill development course there is there. I mean, the other thing is, so CNA, Rusty is laughing hysterically at the fact that I'm bringing this up as an example. CNA requires a 75-hour clinical as a part of the concentrator B course. That's a
Correct.
work-based learning experience in a single placement. That counts.
Correct.
So
Same
there's
thing
still
with
going to be
Philly trade.
opportunities.
Yeah. But I mean, when we look at it, I might have 1,000 concentrators that are due in May, but I don't get them. Then I don't get them as concentrators like Kyle does down in. He gets concentrators their junior year, and then his kids are starting to leave and just go to work. He's, you know, and different things. So, but I don't have I don't get them back the senior year for concentrator status typically.
Gene,
And that's
it
all I was
doesn't
saying.
matter. It's just measured on whether, it's just measured on 25% of any of the students that earn concentrator status while they're in high school.
And then and my question is that individual centers or state average?
That is the state target.
Okay.
You negotiate your local targets.
Yep. Well, we try to, but yeah. Thank you.
Right. All right.
Christine, but maybe.
All right. So the last question here, Christy, and I know somebody asked about the slides. We will make the slides available, but Christy, last question before we move on.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to know if the definition for bucket 2 and the work-based learning experience has changed, because the way it originally was worded from the State Board of Education, it included the completion of the capstone course or of an internship that could be embedded into the course. It kind of makes me wonder why we even have to put a 0 credit, but I know that the DOE has not had capacity or a clear understanding, I'm trying to be gentle, of how to actually show that that has really happened. And even though there's paperwork that different schools are using, so some of the definitions from the State Board of Ed seem to make this a duplicative effort. So I just wondered if something has changed.
Yeah, I want to be careful about maybe not going too far, but what you'll notice here is we've only talked about levels 2, 3, and 4, counting for Perkins. Obviously, 2, 3, and 4 are going to count for grad pathways as well. But there's also a possibility when you see like what's in level 1, I think there's probably the opportunity that some of those experiences that count as a level 1 experience will also count for bucket 2 of grad pathways. So I think there's probably some flexibility there in that language, and that's what they're kind of moving towards as they're having these conversations. But if I say any more than that, it would be completely my opinion and not necessarily what DOE might share with you. So, but
Okay.
Appreciate the question.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I am turning it over to Chris for some data and accountability updates here.
All right, so I need to turn on my phone.
No, Mr.
Okay, perfect. So, the first thing I want to say is there's been a lot of turnover, and I know every year we go through this 38 process, and sometimes, and for some areas, it's painful. Just try to make sure you send that someone attends something, whether it be the webinar that we're going to do or an in-person training. I would say if it's a newer person, an in-person one would be better because they can actually use the computer and do things and actually do the stuff. But at the very least, even if you've got people that have been around, make sure that they at least get on the webinar. I think it's important. We have a couple things that are changing a little bit. This year, we're going to start collecting, if you're teaching courses applied, you need to tell us that. So in the past, we haven't differentiated. So this year we are. So and then to add to that, if courses are approved to be taught as applied, they're still funded. If they are not, then they'd be excluded from funding. So, but applied, that is a new field that we're going to be collecting this year. Also, we have added, just to piggyback on what Tony was saying, for this work-based learning, we have added some new types. So, in the types, you have paid, unpaid, all those types that are in there. We have added the owner entrepreneur. We've added modern youth apprenticeship, registered apprenticeship, internship, and workplace simulation. Those are all in there now. We have actually taken out standalone and embedded because I don't think we need those anymore. I can tell based on what you enter, whether it's standalone or embedded. I don't need you to tell me that. So we took those two away, but you'll see when the directions come out, and we'll talk about it in training, all those new ones that Tony just talked about are in there. So you'll indicate what they are, along with telling us the stuff that you told us before about what they're doing, when they're doing it, and all that. So that is all new. And let's see, there's also, Tony talked a little bit about this at the directors meeting, but this is kind of not something you enter, but we also are doing the CSA. So if we get information that a student is on CSA, then we will exclude those from funding also. So those are just updates for funding that are happening this year that we'll talk about at training. Another thing I want to talk about real quick, I know by September 1st, everybody needs to put in their certification results. So if you haven't done that yet, if you have schools that haven't done that yet, we have now, actually last year we added it, but there's an import for just certification results in the system. So if you have anybody that needs to put those in, remember, you want to put in the passes and the fails. If you need to do that still, or have anybody that does, have them contact us and we can send them out the template without getting into the weeds here. You can download it yourself, but it's easier at this point. Just have them contact me or Jed. We could send the template out, and it's really easy to import just those results into the system. So that has to be done again by September 1st, because we'll probably pull the data very shortly after that. So, and the last update, other than the training dates that I have, is some of you may know if you've been doing it, others are just starting, but if you're trying to report students to the GR, or if you have schools who are, the communication with Inters and data exchange was just started again. It was taken down for a month or so while they were doing updates to how the process works on their side. Once they got that done, we had to make the updates on our side, and then it was started again yesterday. So if you have schools that are needing to do that, everything's now running, and we don't anticipate it going down anymore for the foreseeable future. So the systems are communicating now, and we'll talk more about how that works at training, but it is working, so everything should go through if you report them. So and then again, on the slide are the training dates. Just try to make sure you send someone to something. So does anybody have any questions for me?
Really quick, I would just say for that applied piece Chris talked about first, there was some language in the last newsletter regarding that, and then the data piece is kind of connected to that, but we made some updates to kind of how we're handling applied courses in conjunction with DOE. So that was in the last newsletter if you did not catch that. All right, we will jump.
Good morning. I don't have much for you today, but just a few updates that are important. In terms of invoicing for this fiscal year, I know in past practice, there has been an expectation to submit monthly invoices. We are going to move to quarterly. If you still would like to submit monthly, you are more than welcome, but no more than one per month, no less than quarterly. So that is a change. There have been, some invoices that have come in, and we have wondered if it might be better for a district to do quarterly rather than kind of being forced into that monthly. So you get the option. At the last meeting, there was some discussion about the signatures on invoicing. And so we are completing a designee authorization form. And so for the director and the fiscal agent who signed the GAN, if either of those people would like to designate an authorized signer, we will attach an authorization form to the follow-up email. And then please submit that. Once we receive that, we'll let Chris and Jed know. Should they email those or upload those?
Probably email.
Email. So email those to me. We will make a note of that in the follow-up email as well. So once I receive that, I will let Chris and Jed know that we can change the authorized signature in Indy Grants. Just a reminder, there's only 2 authorized signatures, and so we are only able to have 1 assigned director and 1 assigned fiscal agent, and we will require the authorization form for that. Indy Grants training, I have definitely taken some really great Indy Grants questions in terms of the new invoicing and form submission. And I think what might be helpful is just some short training videos that I record, just doing a sample invoice. And I think that might help those of you who are completing that process, or your fiscal folks to complete that process. It might help to have a video of a sample. So I will do my very best to get those recorded and also into the follow-up email. I hope to do 1 for each form, a pair form, an invoice, and a budget mod, and get those out to you as soon as possible. So if you aren't the person who does that work, we would ask that you be the person who forwards that to the people that need that video. And then just some date reminders. Make sure that you get your final invoices from last fiscal year in by September 30th. And we have had some come in where we have not been able to note that funds were obligated by June 30th. So make sure that that supporting documentation is included in these last few invoices. Christy.
Sorry, so I have been arguing with my accounting person here because she is a stickler to make sure that we follow all of the information. And actually, I don't remember if it's number 15 or 16 in the, yes, I understand these are the to-do list, but it actually states that it's August 31st instead of September 30th. So it truly is September 30th. I mean, that's what it's always been, but it actually is listed differently in the GAN from the 22-23.
Sure. So August 31st is the date that you have to have those obligations liquidated. We have to have the actual reimbursement request in our inbox no later than September 30th. So if you liquidate those obligations, you have another month to get your form completed and submitted to us. So hopefully that helps differentiate those 2 dates.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
It's on. All right. Okay, so yeah, there'll be a couple follow-ups on the finance side of things as in follow-up communication, but have a few more things here just to quickly go over that we weren't sure if we'd have time for, but we do. So on the dual credit side of things, there just have been some different questions that have been popping up, whether from post-secondary institutions or from you all. So we've tried to put together just like a short 2-page guidance document regarding some important things to consider when offering CTE courses for dual credit. That's done. It's been approved by the people that need to approve it here and at the post-secondary institutions. So we'll include that in the follow-up communication. It'll also be in the newsletter that, like I mentioned, will probably go out early next week. You can see here a few of the items that it'll touch on. And then also we're going to work on putting that content into that NLPS planning guide that we made a couple years ago, which our kind of the programming team has been working on updating as well. So we'll kind of embed that content into that guide as a place where a variety of different resources can be found. I do want to say, I mean, we've been looking at some data on a few different things lately, and dual credit continues to be kind of our standout area as when we're looking at our metrics. So a lot of success in that area, and obviously we'd love to continue building on that. And as Tony always says, turn more and more of that into credential attainment as well. So that's what we have on dual credit. So be looking for that document, and hopefully it'll be helpful. Particularly, we'll also be sharing it with those post-secondary entities, and when they are reached out to by a school about newly offering a course for dual credit, something that they'll use in some of those initial discussions. All right, we don't really have much new to share on the legislative side. I think you've all seen the 1002 initial guidance. We've been started to receive some provider applications, and obviously the student application is now open as well. And just put the emails on here again for reference. If an entity is interested in being a provider and they contact you or whatnot, and they have questions, that first email is the best place for them to contact to reach out to. If students or parents are interested, they hear about these new careers. I mean, there have been some media articles and things that they hear about the new career scholarship accounts and are interested in learning more from kind of the student side. The best place to direct them to is that email for the treasurer's office, because they're going to be handling all the questions about qualified expenses and how do students apply and those type of things. As we continue to receive questions and have additional information to share, you'll see more things as it relates to 1002. We have been hoping to have an update on this last topic for a while now, and it's just the conversations that we've needed to have just taken longer to play out than we initially anticipated. But some of you have reached out to us regarding some language that is in this bill here, 1591, around virtual CTE courses, and how that language kind of interplays with the online and virtual policy that we had put out last fall. We hope to have something for you very soon on that. Tony has an important meeting yet today on that topic, and hopefully we can get some guidance out to you soon on that. I can guarantee that the policy that we have in place, the options for virtual will not be shrinking. It's a matter of how that language might expand virtual options and whether or not we need to adjust our policy in that realm. So for now, there's the pathways that have been approved, and keep kind of using that for now. But we are working to clarify how kind of the intent of that language and what updates we need to make. All right. This last slide is basically the slide Tony shared at IACTED regarding the monitoring, the interviews. So I just put it in here just to have it, but we are a good portion of the way through doing the annual reviews. We hope to have that wrapped up in the next week or two, and you'll hear from us after that if you're one of the entities that's selected to have a further audit. All right, that is the content that we have. We've got a few last minutes here for any questions that folks might have.
All right, if there are no questions, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for joining. I know your schedules are incredibly busy, and I hope you're finding these useful. I hope you're finding the webinars helpful. It certainly makes it a little bit easier instead of trying to cram all of this into the actual IACTED meetings to be able to do this. We can go into a little bit more detail here. But as always, if you have suggestions for us, on how we can improve, we will do that. And Bob, did you want to share a question?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I'm sorry I missed last week's meeting. I had heard something about submitting a federal audit for our district. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Laura share a little bit more information about that.
Yeah, sure. So, we need to collect and review your last single federal audit. And so if you could, and if you want to send it to me, but if you want to upload it in Indie Grants, we're gonna house them in Indie Grants. So, we have to review that you have had a federal audit, and that is also part of the annual review that we're completing now. So we're utilizing kind of a 2-in-1. So as soon as you can get those in, that would help us kind of complete that annual review process as well. Most of them have been coming from the State Board of Accounts website, if that helps with a place to look if you aren't sure where they may be.
Thank you.
Oh, and that's all, yeah, and that's only if you meet the threshold for federal funds. So if you have over
$750,000.
50,000 in federal funds, and that's not just Perkins funds, but all federal funds.
So school lunch, special education, all of those federal funds count towards that $750,000 threshold. So essentially it becomes everyone.
Was that sent out anywhere, if any sort of documentation, Tony? I mean, if we hadn't attended last week's meeting and it didn't come up in your webinar today, how would we have known about that?
We probably would have just reached out and said, hey, we may have missed you on some of this information, but that's a good catch. So we appreciate that, Bob.
We can put it in writing within the follow-up email. It's just it's just an item that we need, but there's no sort of punishment attached.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Punishment attached to not submitting it
Right.
or whatnot.
Yeah.
It's kind of new to us, right? That we needed to ask for it.
So, and just to be clear, that was something that we had an audit performed on the Perkins program. As a part of that audit, that was one of the findings, is that we were not reviewing that requirement. Gene?
So on that, you want that uploaded under file upload in Indie Grants, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate you joining in today. Again, if you have any suggestions or if you have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. Thank you.